entire chapter called "Is all free alternative energy being kept from the public?" And I think the answer is an unequivocal yes. It's really amazing, but this even goes back to all the way back to the turn of the 20th century. You know, Rudolf Diesel, that invented the diesel engine, and was inventing an engine that would run on organic matter. Okay.
That was his initial intent, wasn't it?
That was the whole intent. But of course, he tragically fell overboard while crossing the English Channel. And, and of course, today, diesel engines run on compressed gasoline, on gas.
Oh, go figure, Jim.
Gee,
How'd that
I don't know. And, speaking of that, at the beginning of the program, you mentioned the plane crash that killed the president of Poland. I haven't dug into that extensively, but I've dug in enough to find out that the president and his security advisors and financial ministers were all decided that they really didn't like what the European Union was doing, and they were beginning to take steps to strengthen the monetary system there in Poland. And they decided they were going to start doing things that would be to the benefit of Poland and the people there. And then virtually the whole government went down the plane crash.
It's all gone. And I bet the new government that comes in will support whatever the EU wants to do.
Oh, they'll be much more agreeable, I'm sure. And that kind of comes back to the good old US of A. We've had two presidents that tried to bypass the international bankers and issue interest-free money. The first was Abraham Lincoln when he issued greenbacks to support the war between the states, and then John F. Kennedy, who issued about $4 billion in June of 1963, not through the Federal Reserve System that we have to pay interest to, but through the Treasury Department, which we don't. And, George, I'm just not convinced that it was a sheer coincidence that both of those two men were shot in the head in public.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's more to it, and it's all related, I think, to follow the money trail. It's
exactly.
All about that.
You get me caught up in these things, and I get all wound up, and I start talking about all this subject stuff.
That's what you're here for today. Tonight, I told Lisa when we were talking about putting you on the show, I said, you know what? I want to do what I haven't done with Jim in years, and that is 3 hours. Let's get him on early. 3 hours with Jim about all the things he's worked on, not just one subject. Let's just so don't worry about that.
Right.
Talk.
Well, but the thing is, I get caught up in the various subject matter, and then after the show's over with, and then the following days, I'm always get criticized because I didn't tell about certain things. So let me get a couple of things in here while I'm thinking about it. First off, I'm going to be appearing at the Understanding Deep Politics Conference in Santa Clara, California on May the 14th, 15th, and 16th, along with a bunch of people, several of whom are my real heroes, and that includes Ellen Brown, Ian Crane, David Ray Griffin, Annie Machen, Cynthia McKinney, Michael Parenti, one of the guys on my hero list, Peter Phillips, Peter Dale Scott, another one on my hero list, and Barry Zwicker. And it's all going to be discovering the deep roots of our current crisis. And so anybody in the San Francisco, Santa Cruz area, heads up. I think this is going to be something worth paying attention to, and I welcome seeing all of my readers and supporters out there at the Understanding Deep Politics.
Now that's
conference.
Interesting. How did they put that conference together?
That's a good question. They just these are all kind of forward-thinking people. Michael Parenti, he's on my hero list because for years he's been writing about the corporate-controlled mass media. And, of course, Peter Dale Scott has been into deep politics for years. David Ray Griffin, of course, has been, finally got bounced out of his job at...
you know what? I was just wondering when that was going to happen. He was just so vocal about 9/11.
Exactly.
I knew that was going to happen.
And it's really amazing. But you can find out all about that at http://understandingdeeppolitics.org.
Right,
Second thing I want to mention is that since I've got this new book out of the way, I have turned and started paying close attention and been working with some very, very talented people in updating, upgrading, and generally kind of rejuvenating my website, jimmars.com. And in fact, one of the things we've done is rework the Jim Mars store. You can go to jimmars.com, go to the Jim Mars store, and you can actually pre-order my new book at a substantial discount. And of course, it's got all the rest of them on there, and usually those are at a pretty good discounted price too. Another thing that I'm working on, I haven't done this completely yet, but George, you're gonna love this. I've got under in my bookstore, I've got Jim Mars's research sources for Rule by Secrecy, Alien Agenda, and others. And
really?
Yeah, and what I'm going to start doing is, because people say, well, how do you know that stuff? Where do you get that? How do you learn all that stuff? Well, I read, and I read a lot of stuff. And so I'm going to start listing the source, some of the things I consider some of the best source material for all these various topics. So, you know, if you want to continue on or try to even get ahead of Jim Mars, you can go read these sources and bring yourself up to speed on everything from the Kennedy assassination to the alien agenda or whatever. But one of the things that I'm really proud of that just now getting underway is you can go to the website, and on the home page there's a button called Community. And I guess basically it's a forum.
Oh, that's great.
And just to try to get people to the forum, you go there and you can click on Conspiracies, and that will take you to an index. And in there is one called UFO ET. And if you'll go there, one of the things I've done for my readers is that I have posted an article about the alien ghost in Roswell, New Mexico. Which you may remember that, George. Yep. We talked about that several years ago, but I think there's a lot of people that, you know, either didn't catch that one or forgot about it or whatever. But as I say in the little introduction, I say, here's my account of the alien ghost in Roswell, New Mexico. I said, I know how this sounds, very woo-woo and far out, but I assure you this is real and based on interviews with the hospital staff, and plus there's scientific evidence that something very unusual is happening in the hospital. So I say keep your skepticism in high gear, but give this story a fair hearing. It's quite amazing, and it is. So they can get the whole story just by going to jimmars.com, going to Jim Mars Community, clicking on UFO ET, and then they can go right to the story.
All right, so, back in... Now, this is how it's all connected. By the way, Jim Mars with 2 R's, by the way.
Right.
And it's linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Back in the summer of 1947, a fellow by the name of Kenneth Arnold spotted some UFOs while he was flying his little plane. And what has happened, though, was before that, you're convinced the Nazis had information about flying saucers. Years before that, aren't you?
Well, it's not just my belief, George. It's a historic fact that when the Allies overran some of the secret German research facilities, they found schematics and drawings of flying saucers on the drawing board. We're working on them. In fact, the only real controversy has been, did they ever actually get something that was operational? And that was kind of iffy for a while, but in studying that at some length, I'm pretty convinced that, yes, they did. And I think that was part of the technology transfer that took place after the war. And when I say technology transfer, of course, and you, I know, have, but those who've read my book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, understand that towards the end of the war, Germany had developed a lot of outstanding technological breakthroughs. They had the first operational jet fighter.